So this topic is about storage management. Now, storage management, or we can say disk management. Storage management, or we can say disk management. Now, in this, what we see is how we can manage our disks in our system, and how we can create partitions, and how we can use those partitions, and what are the other options of managing disk we have. So first, when we install the system, we create some partitions. If you remember, we created some partitions. Either we use automatic partitioning or we use manual partitioning. So if we see that when we install the system, we choose partitioning method. We choose partitioning method, and we have actually two methods, or we can say we have two partitioning methods to choose from. One, what? Automatic partitioning. Second is what? Manual partitioning. So from automatic or manual, we choose these two options to configure our partitioning style, partitioning scheme. Now, when we choose, now remember, when we choose automatic partitioning, system create default layout of partitions. Default layouts of partition automatically. Now automatically it creates the default layouts. That means it creates the partitions which is required to run the system. So it creates what? That means it create the required system partitions. So it creates only the required partitions. Now what is the system partitions, and what is the default, what is the partitioning, we can say default layout. So the default of partitions. Now, what is the default layout of the partitions? So it requires system partitions. We have one system partitions, and that is what and that is what we need. System partitions are first boot partition, we need boot partition, or we can say this is boot partition. Then we need slash partition, and then we need swap partition. Now these three partitions are what? System partitions. These are system partitions which we required. We need to have it. Okay, let me do this. So first is system partitions. That is what we need boot, which is slash boot. Then we need slash, then we need swap. These are system partitions. Then we have data partitions. Now these data partitions are, it can be any, it is not required actually, it can be any, but we can have slash home slash where. These are the example of, we can say these are the example of data partition. So the required is what? The system partitions, and the data partitions are not that important. These are, if you want then you can create, and if you don't want you will not create. So system partitions are important, which is needed, and the data partitions are like we don't need actually. It is not created by default. Only if we required, then only it will create. Okay, so system partitions are must be created, and data partitions are optional. So if you want, then it can create, or if you don't want, it will not create the data partitions. So these partitions are optional. Data partitions and the system partitions are important. And I can say for the data partitions, I can say etc. No, I will not say that, because etc is also a partitioning in our system. So any other partition I can create, but the data partition we can create home and var, because home has multiple users home directory, and where directory can have all the database kind of services data. Like you can have a database services, the data of that database services will go to where directory. If you are having a mail server, your mail server's data will also go to where directory. If you are having a web server, web server's data will also go to where directory. If you are creating virtual machines, that virtual machine data will also go to where directory. That where directory can have lots of data, so you can create a separate partition for that where directory. So we can say like this is what a data partition. So whether if you create if you when you choose automatic partitioning, system create the default layout partitions automatically. That means it creates the required system partitions, and that is what the default layout of partitions, and that what it will create this. Now it will create the home directory, it will not create automatically. Let me see. For data partition, now if we are talking about automatic partitioning, so it will not create home directory automatically, it will not create where directory automatically. It will create home directory only in a condition. There is a condition. So I will put this one here. That the system partition must be created and data partitions are optional. So when you select automatic, so this is the situation. Data partitions are optional. It will create partition for home only if size of your hard disk size of the hard disk is greater than or equal to 50 GB. That means when you select the automatic partitioning, then what it will do, it will create the automatic layout of default layout of partitions automatically. And that means what? It creates the system partition, which is must, and the data partitions are optional. It will create a partition for home only if the size of the hard disk is greater than or equal to 50 GB. If it is less than 50 GB, it will not create any partitions, any home partition. And I think I should add this under this automatic one. And then when you select manual partitions, when we choose manually partitioning or manual partitioning, then we have to create system partitions, and we can say required because it is not, or we can say optional, data partitions manually, and it will not create any automatic partitioning. It will we have to create it manually. That means we have to create system partitions, also we have to create data partitions, and that we have to do it manually. Now when we are installing the system, we did it already. We have chosen the automatic partitioning when we installed it in CLI, and when we installed the graphical one, we chose the manual, and we saw that how we can create the partitions manually also. Now those partitions, when you install, after that it will not show. Now because of the file system, different file system of Linux, you will not able to see what the you will not able to see the partitions in your Linux system. Now if you are in command line, you will not see anything, but if you are in graphical, still you will not see any partitions. You will see only the mount points. So as you can see here in the system, we are logged in as a graphical user in a graphical interface. So there is no partitions. If I go to my computer, this is my computer, I can see there is no partitions here. If you see, this is my computer, and in this side also you can't see any partitions, and in this side also you can't see any partitions. So what you see here is only the directories. This is what it is called the file system, and you see only the directories of this, and you will not see any partitions here. So what you see here is the mount point. These directories are also, we can say, it's a mount point. Mount point, that means the partitions are mounted on this directory. So for example, the boot directory, this boot directory must need a partition. This is a system partition because it contains the bootable files. Now the partition is mounted on this directory, but we are not able to see any sign of partition here. If I open it, it looks like a directory. If I go inside, it looks like a directory and we have files inside the directory. But actually these all files are under the partition, because this boot directory, on this boot directory, the partition is mounted on this boot directory, and all the files inside this directory is going into that partition. And the directory which does not have any mounted partition, that files of that directory will go to slash, because these all directories are under slash. And if it is under slash, you can see here what it is showing here. I opened my computer here, but okay, if you maximize this or not, I opened this my computer here, and you can see here what I have opened is a slash. In the taskbar you can see it is slash symbol. So actually these all directories are under slash. You can say like in command line, like if I list slash, I can see all those partitions, all those directories. So every directory is under slash partition. Now we have this is what a system partitions. That means anything we create under any of these directory, it will store in this system partition. Boot, this boot is also inside the same system partition, you can see, but for the boot directory we have a separate partition. So whatever the file is in this directory, it is not going into this partition, it is actually going into its own partition. But there is no sign of any partitions are here, so we can't see the partitions, because the style of partitioning is different here in Linux system. Now this is what the default thing when we install the system. Now we will see how we can manage these partitions after installation also, or in case like if you want, then you can do it in a installation time of installation, like when you are installing the system, then you can do whatever you want. You can create how many partitions you want. Apart from the system partition, you can create how many partitions you want. Now we will see, because the system is already installed, so now we will see how we can manage the partitions here. And I think we will see this